Hello and welcome to PoE For Dummies Blight. Blight is a tower defense mechanic in Path of Exile that you will encounter early on in the campaign, and she is basically the mechanic of Cassia. Cassia, the sister Cassia, is one who manages the blight and the encounter and the mechanics. Now, when it comes to the blight mechanic, as it is a tower defense, we are basically protecting a pump, and without further ado, let me show you how it looks in map or in campaign. You're going to encounter Sister Cassia and Ichor Pump next to her. She's basically looking at the pump, and then you can talk to her and then click on the pump to begin the encounter. Once you begin the encounter, you will see some lanes spawning. Now, when you see these lanes spawning, you will have these hammers on the location of towers you can place. There are a total of 6 towers that you can place, and they are Chilling, Empowering, Fireball, Seismic, Shock Nova, and Summoning. Each is going to represent a color that we are going to mention. Now, when you place your towers, there are portals at the end of all these lanes that you are going to see, which have a certain affinity. What does that mean? As you can see here, if it has chill affinity or lightning affinity, that means those towers are less effective on that specific lane. So it would be recommended not to place those towers, but once you make a combination of all towers, then that effect is going to not matter a lot. The only one that does matter is the actual chill one, as it can ignore the chill from your towers, but you can build a glacial cage and you'll be fine. Now, when it comes to towers, towers have tiers from tier 1 to tier 4. When you see here, we have Chilling Tower, chills and damages nearby enemies. Shock Nova creates shocked ground and casts Shock Nova. As you know, shock ground makes enemies take more damage based on the shock amount. Then we have Empowering, which increases the effectiveness of other towers. This one is very important. Then we have Seismic, which damages and stuns nearby enemies. Very good tower. Then we have Minion Tower, which is Summoning Tower. Can only summon minions when previous minions are dead. And we have the Fire Tower, Fireball Tower, which casts a Fireball. Now, what you want to build, usually, next to the pump, you want to build a Chill Tower, because you want to give yourself as much time as possible before the monsters arrive to the pump. Now, I will play this out, and I usually build like a Seismic Tower as well, which is, we call them a Stun Tower. Or you can build a Fire Tower as well. I will show you a little schematic I've made so it makes your journey through Blight easier. But in regards to Blight itself, Blight is a very simple mechanic that... Blight is a very simple mechanic that you can do with any build. Absolutely any build. Now, when it comes to rewards, there are different rewards that you can get from Blight. Once the fungal growth is successfully destroyed, the pump is going to explode. It's going to shoot out the rewards. Usually they are filtered out because there's a lot of rewards, so I have it filtered out. And then on the Blight chests, hidden by some trees here, you can either have normal items drop. You can either have, you can look down here, you can have like armor. This includes synthesized armor and fractured armor. And you can have Blight Oils, which is the most common one. There are also divination cards, weapons, fragments, and such. So you can find that. Oils I will cover right now, which is the main currency for Blight. Now, if you do not have a Blight tab, these you can store regularly in your own tab, or you can sell these, the lowest tiers, and you can sell them for higher tiers. If you don't have enough, because it's 3 to 1, you will get the refunded refunded ones. However, if you have only one, it's going to give you a scroll fragment. So be careful when you do those. Now, these tiers of oils, there are a lot. What do they represent? Well, Blight has this mechanic called Anoint. Now, if you don't have the Blight tab, this Anoint tab is on Sister Cassia on Anoint items. What does Anoint mean? Anoint is like an enchant on an item, which means that you can add an additional thing. But what can you add? If you open your passive skill tree, you can see that every single notable passive, when you press Alt on it, tells you what oils it requires. It shows you the oils in top right corner, and it tells you their names on the bottom. Every single passive of these does so, including some of the hidden passives on the PoE tree, which you can find while using and browsing Path of Building. So if you see someone have an Anoint, someone has like a point somewhere that's not connected to the tree, like I have here, that means they have anointed that point. You can only anoint one point regular means. There are items that allow you to anoint more than one. Those are Blight-specific uniques. Now, anointing can be done on your jewelry, rings, and amulets. Now, on amulets, let's start first there, you can anoint notable passives based on what oils you give to the vendor and based on what oils you need. So let's put one, let's use like 3 random oils. It will give us, as an example, Sleight of Hand. If you want to do something more expensive, you can apply an additional curse. So these you will learn over time, and you will see what we have when you mouse over different things and when you press Alt to see what they are. So just notable things, wherever you have the higher tiers of oil, those are more powerful anoints. And those are used for, for some builds to anoint special things. Now, in regards to rings, rings are a much more fun way to anoint items, because rings help you in your Blight encounter. You can have left and right ring slot anointed. You can have whatever. You can see mine has your meteor tower, towers create burning ground for 3 seconds on hit, and your empowering towers have increased effect. But how do you know which one it gives? Well, there is this lovely website called Blight Helper. I will post the link of this website in the description below, but here you can see what you can anoint. You can anoint the amulet, you can anoint the ring, you can anoint the map, and you can ravage anoint. That I will cover after this. So let's go with the rings. What do I recommend for rings? You can choose your towers here on the right part. I will always recommend doing Meteor Tower. That's number 1, and I will always recommend doing Meteor Tower Burning Ground, because they create 3 seconds of burning ground, which helps a lot to deal damage, as it's an AoE damage and it can cover multiple lanes, so you have more time where you actually deal damage while the meteor reloads. And I will always recommend Empowering Tower 1 or Empowering Towers have increased effect, which means everything has increased effect in it, and your Empowering Towers have increased range. Whichever one you pick, both of these are good. If you want to do anything else, feel free to experiment. These are what I recommend for beginners and what I use here to help me finish the mechanic itself. Now, once you've done that, there is also a map anointing system. Now, this is for Blighted Maps. So once you play through the content, once you do Blighted Maps, in those oil segments that you saw, oil chests, you will occasionally drop Blighted Maps. They start from white tier through yellow tier and they end in red tier. There is also an Uber tier, but I will cover that in a second. What you do with these maps is when you open these maps, you are just going to see a map itself and just Blight itself, pardon. In the map, there's going to be nothing else. The entire map is going to be empty and you're just going to see the pump. Once you open up the pump, you will see instead of a few lanes, you're going to have a very huge amount of lanes. Now, they will not spawn immediately, they will spawn over time. Now, how do I build this? I have also drawn a lovely schematic here, which I will explain in a second. But let's just cover this one, then I will explain anointing of maps. So what you want to do in the middle, you always want to put an empowering tower. Why? Because it has a radius of how many towers or how much it can actually empower. Now, as you can see, my chill tower is not empowered, but the ones that have a small ring, they are empowered. So I always have a chill, a lightning, a stun, and fire in the empowering tower. That's basically how you want to build, and this shows it fully. These are all tier 3 as it's shown underneath, and the meteor tower is always tier 4 because that's an upgrade. It's either meteor or flamethrower, which I will explain in a second. Then when you play throughout the map, let me just speed this up a bit, you will see that there are many lanes that spawn, and they also spawn on the other side. Now, over time, if you've done this correctly, you won't even need to engage with the mechanic too much in regards to your own damaging, but it is always good to bring a character with high enough spread DPS, not single target DPS, AoE spread DPS, because they spawn in lanes and they spawn in very, very good quantity. Now I'll play this out for a second and I'll explain bosses. There are these lanes that have the icons of bosses. The ones that are not colored are basically where the boss is waiting to be spawned or is killed, and the ones that have the red icon means the boss is currently active. Now, if you know where these are, good on you, because it's very difficult sometimes to tell. But on the map, you can see these icons that represent bosses. Keep in mind, some of these bosses have teleports, some of them have spawning towers, and now we're going to go over how to fail the Blight encounter. You fail the Blight encounter when your pump reaches 0 durability. Keep in mind, in regular maps it has 10, in these maps it has 20. When a regular mob reaches the Blight pump, when it reaches the field, it loses 2 durability. So 5 regular mobs, goodbye regular Blight, and when a boss reaches, the boss removes 10. That's the most important part. On Blighted maps, you can have 2 bosses reach it. On regular maps, you can have 1 boss reach it, and then whatever you've done to that point is it. The Blight explodes, and it says you have failed the encounter. Now, in regards to what else you can do, you can, after you finish the encounter, after you finish the encounter, you can, of course, loot the chests and everything, and that's it. Here's one interesting thing. One interesting thing is that the Blight has specific types of oil that are used for specific purposes. We have Tainted Oil, which is an oil that is used when an item is corrupted to change the anoint on the item, including the maps as well. We have Reflective Oil, which is underneath the Tainted Oil, which is the same as Tainted, however, it is for mirrored items, so items that are mirrored are able to be anointed now. And you have Prismatic Oil, which unlock the special anoints that have been added. For any anoints that you need, I would strongly suggest checking either the wiki or the path of building, especially if you follow a build guide. It's going to help you immensely. Now, in regards to maps, in maps, when you anoint regular maps, you can do 3 oils. You can see what the oils give, but for simplicity's sake, I am going to always recommend having amber oils because they reduce cost of building and upgrading towers. They give more pack size too. I will always recommend teal if you want to rush the maps. So this means Blight monsters spawn 90% faster and counter duration is 150 seconds shorter. Regular encounter is 300, so you're going to have 2.5 minutes of an encounter instead of 5. This is very good if you just want to rush through Blighted Maps. The next one is Azure Oil. Varieties of items in 15 blighted chests are lucky. That means 15 chests double roll to something that's a bit more rare. And you have additional blight bosses for additional chests. This one I would not recommend, as this one can make the encounter a lot more difficult, but I think the next one is, yes, the Violet Oil. Lanes of Blight encounters have 75% chance for an additional reward chest. So you want extra chest, of course. So it's either extra chest or it's either lucky. Then you can have the red one, which gives you more lucky. Black one, which gives you more blighted chests to contain additional reward. And then I would not recommend using opalescent silver or golden, as they are way too expensive to even bother anointing. So I would recommend either amber, while you're learning to reduce the cost of upgrading towers, and teal, Azure Oil to get blight chests are lucky. Anything above that I wouldn't do under tier 13. Which brings us to the next point. Tainted Oils drop only in corrupted, blighted maps that are tier 13 and higher. So I have here tier 13. So if you have a tier 13, 14, 15, 16 corrupted, then you can get the Tainted Oil. Now, how do you corrupt these? You basically just put it there. You can use chisels to give it quantity, and then you can use your regular alchemy orbs to see if you like it. If you do, you Val orb it, but don't forget, first you want to anoint it. So you anoint it and then you corrupt it. Why? If you corrupt a map, to change the anoint, you will need to add a Tainted Oil. Requires a Tainted Oil to be changed. So that's basically it. That's what you want to generally do. Keep in mind, sometimes this can upgrade the map to a tier. The regular rules of Valorb apply. Also, when you put a map inside, you can use different modifiers to increase the quantity of items, which are Atziri Fragments, sacrifices, which give you 5% per. And you can use Uber Atziri Fragments, which are mortals. They give you 8% quantity of items per. So you can use those as well. Now, when it comes to Blighted Scarabs, we have 4 scarabs. You have your regular Blight Scarabs. That area contains a Blight encounter. You have your Blight Scarab of Blightheart, which you can use 1 as well. Blight encounters have only 1 blighted chest, and they spawn many more waves of enemies, and they blighted chests in area grow larger and more rewarding the more blighted enemies are slain. Basically, this, instead of having all types of rewards possible, you get 1. This one can be worthwhile. In my testing, it really wasn't, because it really relied on you getting blighted oils and such for the payout. You can use this one, test it out, enjoy. Next one, Blight Scarab of Blooming. This one, Blight encounters in area have up to 3 additional unique bosses. Unique enemies in Blight encounters have a 100% increased life, which means double life, and tier 14 plus blighted maps found in area drop as Blight-Ravaged Maps. What does this mean? You want to do these in tier 16 maps or tier 17s if you wish to. Now, if you do them in those maps, when you drop maps, whenever a tier 14 plus map drops, it gets immediately transformed into Blight-Ravaged Maps. So this is tier 14 blighted maps, drop as Blight-Ravaged Maps. So those maps. What can help you do this one? There you can have passive points on the tree that give you +1 to the map drops, +1 to level of map drops per tier. You can also have map scarabs that make it so as well. And you can basically just have a silly amount of quantity on Blight when you add everything else. So you want to combine blooming with something else. This one tends to be expensive because it can drop a lot of maps, but it can be worthwhile if you want to chase a lot of ravaged maps. Now, I'll do the last scarab, then we'll talk about Blighted Ravaged Maps. Blight Scarab of Invigoration. Invigoration means each empowering tower in areas grants blighted monsters in range increased difficulty and reward. What you want to do is you want to make just green towers everywhere. Every tower, green tower, to get more rewards. If you combine all of these, with map modifiers and things, you can have a silly amount of loot. That's absolutely possible. However, as I said, Blightheart is a bit of a gamble, but the rest are perfectly fine. They tend to be expensive, so they are a bit expensive, but if you would like to play Blighted Maps, that can suit you well. Now let's go over to Blighted Ravaged Maps. Blighted Ravaged Maps are a special tier of Blighted Maps which go above the red tier, and those are counted as Uber maps. They have 200% more monster life, 20% monster movement speed. We have maps item quantity can also affect blight chests at 50% value instead of 25% value. And we have can be anointed up to 9 times. So when you want to anoint things, you can also go to the Blight Helper and you can choose which anoint you would like to go for. As an example, you can anoint with however many oils, different oils you want, it doesn't really matter, and it gives you and tells you what you are doing. I would, for Blighted Ravaged Maps, recommend using at least 1 amber oil because it's going to help you for reducing the cost of building and upgrading towers, and I would just smack like red, black, and the extra reward chest as well for violet if you want to. So I would do that one myself. I don't overjuice these because I don't find any reasonable way for beginners at least to do so. You can of course do the golden oils to contain additional rewards as 90%. You can do silver oils, increased quantity of items found. Silver oils are great if you chase as many rewards as possible, and you can do a palisand in 54 blight chests are lucky, but keep in mind, while 1 ravaged map costs as much as 1 silver oil and 3 silver oils or 1 golden oil, this can be extremely expensive. However, the generation can go either too high or too low, so be careful with that. And now the final thing that we have for today are points. When we are doing blighted points on the Atlas map, when we have all the blighted nodes, this is how it looks regularly. There are 2, 4, 6 blighted clusters, and let's go over them. So for the first blighted cluster, we have small passives which give you a chance to contain a blight encounter. Blight encounters spawn more non-unique monsters, and we have reduced cost of building and upgrading towers. The 2 notables are blight encounters spawn 50% more non-unique monsters, and they spawn faster. And blight towers in your maps can be salvaged after the blight encounter. Higher tier towers grant better salvaged rewards. Salvaged rewards are improved for each different tower type built during encounter. This one, if you want to do, I personally found this one good for gold generation. We'll see if that stays in the game. And this one also is generally okay for bubblegum currency, but I don't use it as it has way too much clicking. There's the small node here, which gives you blight encounter chance. If you use a scarab, you don't even need to bother with this, but this is around like 70 or 80%, 76% chance to get the blight encounter. On the left side, we have another big one with 2 paths. The regular one varieties in items containing 1 blight chests, lucky, and you can have 5% chance for additional reward chest. If we go up, we get 10% chance for an additional reward chest, and if you go down, 8% chance for blight chest to contain an additional reward. Both of them are 8, and varieties of items in 1 blighted chest is lucky. Now, when it comes to Epidemiology, varieties of items contained in 3 Blight chests are lucky, and Blight chests in your maps have 20% chance to be openable again. This is amazing if you want to run Blight, as you can sometimes proc 5 times that you open the same chest. Awesome if you're farming Blighted Maps. Another small one with a keystone notable I will mention here is Blight monsters take increased damage, just pure damage increase, and here take 12% increased damage. Ichor pumps have 100% increased durability, so from 10 to 20 life. And the keystone notable is Cassia's Pride. Blight monsters in your maps take 75% less damage from players and minions, and Blight towers and their minions in your maps deal 300% more damage. Basically, you make it a tower defense. Usually people don't go for it. 2 other small ones are Blight Maps Reward Chance. You get 10% more chance to contain Blighted Maps in chest, and Blight chests in your maps have 60% more chance to contain Blighted Maps. Keep in mind, that's 100% more. Completing a Blight encounter grants all players Blight Reach, which grants a chance for maps found to drop as Blighted Maps instead, which is 1 minute buff if I'm not mistaken. So any maps that drop, if you can clear the map quickly enough, you are going to get a metric ton of Blighted Maps. And the last one is Blight Boss additional rewards. Have 5% chance to add an additional reward chest when defeated, so Blight Bosses. And the most important node is Blightspawn. Blight bosses in your maps have 10% chance to add an additional reward chest when defeated. 1 lane of Blight encounters in your maps is guarded only by Blight bosses. This can spawn 10 to 20 bosses easily. So pay attention to this one. This one is a difficult one. And now for the final thing I have, well, final 2 things, I have here how to build towers and what to do with towers. I'm sorry this has been a long video, but I wanted to cover all the bases. So as you can see here, I have here the green tower. Everything is mentioned here. Green tower, and where I would place the regular towers and where I would place the minion towers as well. If you use minions, if not minions, then you would do lightning tower and such. But you want them to be placed inside. Now here's a little mention. If you are doing this, chill tower closest to pump, this is the basic explanation. You can pause the video here. I won't post this. I'll post this in the Discord, but I won't post like the link and such. There's no need. You can pause the video. You can read this one. The most important part, if map has monsters cannot be stunned, stun tower is worthless. So the seismic tower is worthless. You can do seismic tower with petrification. That's good. But otherwise, I would just build a level 4 big minion because it taunts. Now, if map has monsters cannot be slowed or reduced action speed, then chill towers are useless, but when you upgrade them to cage, you can entrap them. And in both cases, big minion, like level 4 upgrade, is very, very good. As I said, this picture will be in the Discord if you are willing to, but fine, I'll link it. I'll link it as well. But the most important part is this one. I will also have this image in the Discord linked too. This is what I personally think the best towers are for playing the Blight encounter. Of course, you have all the regular ones. You have some that are absolutely useless, like Freeze Bolt Tower. It fires like icicles, it's useless. Flamethrower is useless. Smothering Tower is useless because it weakens enemies in range, sorry. Then you have your Arc Tower, which is again useless compared to Lightning Storm, but I wouldn't even upgrade this. And then we have situational ones. Minions are situational, whichever one of these you want to do. Scouts deal more damage, Sentinels don't. Lightning Tower just has a bigger area of effect that deals lightning damage. Temporal Tower and Stonegaze Tower with Petrification and Slow. Petrification works on monsters that cannot be slowed, so keep that in mind. Temporals don't. But if they are stunned, the Stonegaze Tower does not work, then Temporal does. When we have Meteor Tower, we've already seen that one. Big Meteor with Burning Ground, that's awesome. And Glacial Tower to entrap enemies. Now, one caveat is Imbuing Tower, which is for minion players. This is BIS for them. Improves the effectiveness of players and their minions in range. So sometimes you will see minion players stand on top of the pump with like all the imbuing towers and then they just go AFK. So minions do be awesome for this. But that will cover everything Blight related for beginners. Absolutely everything that you need to know. So one more little thing I would like you to pay attention is to how you build your towers. Once you learn how to build your towers, the maps are going to be extremely less stressful. Now, when it comes to what builds can do the Blight, any build. Absolutely any build can do Blight, because most of the damage, like 90% plus of the damage, goes through the towers. With a little caveat, you need a decently good build to do a Blight-Ravaged map, because it spawns a huge amount of monsters and they are way more tanky, way more life and such. So basically Uber mods do apply. Now regular map mods do not apply in Blighted Maps, or Scarabs cannot be used, but you can use the other enhancements for quantity and quality. So that is going to be it for this video. If you like the video, please do give it a like, sub if you don't mind. I'll also link the website in the description. That's still a work in progress for also written guides and things. But I want to thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry you waited a long time for this one. I've been a little bit sick, but it is what it is. We'll continue with PoE content shortly. Next one, we'll see what's gonna be like, but most likely another PoE for Dummies. Or if you have any other ideas you would like me to cover first, please do write them down in the comment section below. So thank you so much once again, and I will see you in the next PoE video or stream. Have a good one.